Hello, welcome back. In this video, we are going to learn about the web and HTTP. So what is the agenda? We will learn about the concept of World Wide Web or WWW and HTTP. Then WWW architecture. After that, different types of web documents that are available in the internet like active web documents, dynamic web documents and static web documents. After that, we are going to learn in details about the HTTP transaction and its different messages. After that, HTTP transaction in details. Then the meaning of proxy server and its uses. So what is the concept of the web and HTTP? Actually, WWW, if you recall, it is the repository of information from all over the world which are linked together from different sites. Now this is very important because there is a client which would request for a web document from a server. Now this server has several sites where these documents are placed. Now whenever there is a request from a client to the server fetches that particular site which is there in the request and gives in response the web document that is desired by the client. Now this WWW has a unique combination of flexibility, portability and user-friendly features. And these characteristics make it very much efficient to give internet services as compared to other services of the internet. This was basically formed by CERN, which is the European Council for Nuclear Research. Initially, they developed this repository to place the research articles for the purpose of research, and slowly it evolved as a repository of various information throughout the world. This is a pictorial representation of WWW. There is a client here and these are the different sites of the server like site A and site B where the web documents are present. Suppose this is web document 1, but this is web document 2. The client will make a request to the particular site from where it will fetch the web document. And in return, the server, this is basically the server, will give a response by sending that particular web document. Similarly, if the client wants a different web document like web document 2, which it knows that it resides at site B of the server, then it will make again a request for the particular web document and at the site B, and the server in return will give the web document in a response message. So this is the concept of WWW. Now what is a WWW architecture? There are various companies and vendors that offer this concept like WWW. They all have the same architecture. Let's look at it in detail. So this is the browser. So WWW architecture basically means a browser, and the browser consists of 3 terms. One is the controller, the second one is the client protocols, and the third one is the interpreter. Here there is a monitor or the screen. So the method is like this. The client uses the browser program by using the controller. The controller then sends the request by using one of the client protocols, like it can be HTTP, it can be FTP, it can even be Telnet, or it can be SMTP, etc., depending on the particular application. And these client protocols then fetch the document from the server, and the server in return, in response, gives the document to the client. The client uses any of the interpreters like HTML or JavaScript or CGI, etc., and looks into the document at the monitor. So the document is viewed here. What is the URL? URL means Uniform Resource Locator. As defined earlier, this Uniform Resource Locator is a unique identifier for a web page. Actually, this web page resides in a server, which is actually a computer having a particular name, and also there is a port number through which that web page must be fetched, and there is a path where the web page resides within the computer. So this is called the Uniform Resource Locator. With the help of this, the web page can be fetched by the client. Now let's look at the writing of URL. How do you write the URL? Basically, you have to write the protocol here. Either it is HTTP. So this is the most common protocol that is used, or it can also be FTP, which is seldom used. And after writing the protocol, you have to give the colon, then backslash, and then you give the host name. This is the name of the computer where the web page resides. Then if there is a port number associated with it, you give the port number. For HTTP, we use the port number 80, and then you give the path of the file. So this is the file name. Now there is a term associated with www, and that is cookies. Now what are cookies? Cookies basically store old information. Now this www using HTTP is a stateless protocol. What is the meaning of stateless protocol? This means that when a client requests for a particular web document from the server places the request, and in response it gives the document back to the client, and then the entire communication is deleted. So this is a stateless protocol. Again, when the client needs to fetch another document, then it again places the request and the server gives the response. In this way it happens. Now cookies are a means of saving this information. How does it do this? It stores the old information. Like many a times there are clients which can request multiple web documents from the same server. So once a request is made, the server keeps the information of the request from the client in a file. So it is called a cookie file. It keeps it in the cookie file, and the next time when again the client requests the same server for another document, then the server looks into the cookie file to see whether it is an old client or a new client. So that way cookies save a lot of time. Now we look into different types of web documents. Now web documents are of three types. One is static, dynamic and active web document. Let us understand static web document. Let's say we have a client here. There is a server here and there is a web page over here. The client wants to have this web page, so it places a request to the server. Now this server then fetches the web page residing in its own computer and passes it as a response to the client. So the client will get the web page. Now this is a simple web page and static in nature, meaning that there is no change in the web page and the client cannot make a change in the web page. It has been created by the server using basic HTML language, which is known as the Hypertext Markup language, and it remains there and it is static because there cannot be any changes made in the HTML document. It is only the server who can make a change in the HTML document, and then when the client requests for the same document the next time, if there is a change, then the server can give the modified web document back to the client. So that is why it is known as a static web document. Now what is a dynamic web document? As before, let's say there is a client and there is a server. The client places a request for a particular application. For example, it wants to know the date and time from the server. What the server will do, it will run the application program of date and time, and the result that it will get, it will feed it as a response back to the client. So the client will get a response here in the form of a result of the date and time. This is dynamic in the sense that since date and time will change with each request, then the client will get a different result for different requests. Next we have active documents. There are many a times when some application programs need to be run at the client end. So we have the client as before, we have the server here. So the client makes a request to the server. The server here has the applet, which is the application program that should be run at the client end. So the server sends the applet, and this applet then goes to the client end and it is run at the client end to get the result. Unlike the dynamic document where the application program is run at the server end, here the applet is run at the client end to get the result. So this is the difference between static document, dynamic document and active document. For static document, we can use HTML. For dynamic document, we use CGI, Common Gateway Interface. And for active document, we can use JavaScripts. Now let us turn our attention to HTTP. HTTP basically functions as a combination of FTP and SMTP. FTP stands for File Transfer Protocol and SMTP stands for Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. It is similar to FTP because just like FTP, it fetches files, but it is much simpler as compared to FTP. In FTP, we have two communication paths. One is the control path and the other one is the data path. But in HTTP, we have only the data path and do not have the control path. It is similar to SMTP because just like SMTP, it sends messages. in the form of response and request. But in SMTP, these messages are read by the clients, whereas in HTTP, these messages are not read by the users, rather they are read by the HTTP servers and then they are deleted. Also, in SMTP, the messages are stored and then forwarded to the user, but in HTTP, the messages are sent in real time. HTTP basically uses the port number 80 to send messages. Let us now look at the HTTP transaction. Let's say we have the client here and the server here. Transaction means the client will send a request to the server and the server in return will send a response to the client. So the request message and the response messages are different. Let's look at them. One of the request message can be GET, in order to get hold of a particular type of document. So we can write GET followed by the URL followed by HTTP. So there should be a space backslash 1.1. So this is the version number of HTTP. Then we write the host, then colon, then host number and the port number. The response message from the server is HTTP backslash 1.1 200, then OK. We will understand what this 200 and OK means later on. There can be another request message like post messages. So post, then space, then backslash messages HTTP slash 1.1, and response message can be put, create page, and then HTTP 1.1. So these are the different types of request messages and response messages. How many request types are there? So these request messages are basically known as methods. So let's look at the different methods and their actions. So when we write GET method, it means it is requesting a web page from the client to the server. Head means document information request from client to server. Post means sending information from client to server. Put means sending document from server to client. Then there is a trace method which echoes the incoming request from the server to the client. Connect is reserved and option is available options inquiring. Now there are two types of messages in request line and the other one is status line. In request line we have a request type. So any of the request types or the methods will be given here, followed by space, and then the space, then HTTP version number will be given. For the status line we have to give the HTTP version number followed by space, then the space, then status phrase. Let's understand what this status phrase means. So let's understand the version of HTTP transaction. The present version is HTTP 1.1. URL, as we have already learned, it is uniform resource locator, and it is the only unique identifier for a particular web page. It should give the name of the host computer containing the web page, the port number, and the path, together with the type of protocol. We have already learned this before. Now there is a status code which defines what is the meaning of the response. The status code, if it is in the range of 100, then it is mainly information related status code. If it gives 200, that means the request has been successful and the response has been given from the server to the client. If it is in the range of 300s, it means that redirection client to another URL. That means the server does not have the required information. So the client, whatever the client has requested, the server has redirected it to another URL. 400 means there has been an error at the client side and the request is not successful. 500 means there is error at the server side and response is not being able to be transmitted from the server to the client. Now the status phase basically gives the meaning of status code. So let's look at the header of HTTP. The header basically consists of the header name followed by a colon, then a space, then the header value. So what are the different types of headers that are present? So let's see here the header type and description. We can have the general type of header which gives general information about the HTTP transaction. We can have request type of header which gives client's configuration. Then we have response type which gives server's configuration. We have entity type which gives the body of the message. Now we can see here this general type and the request type and the entity type. If you combine them, then they can be in the request message from the client to the server. On the other hand, this general, then response and entity type can be in the server side and it is a part of the response message. For general information, it basically gives information about the cache control. It gives information about the connection status, then date, then MIME version. MIME is multipurpose internet mail exchange. It is a form of electronic mail protocol and the upgradation version. The request header type gives basically the document format of the client's configuration. The response header type gives the server's configuration in the form of accept range, then the age of the document, then the public, how long will it be public, then retry after, and server information. For the entity type of header, it basically gives the body which is there in both the request message as well as in the response message. It gives the E tag, it gives the allow information like what are the URLs which are allowed, expiry date and the last modified date and the location of the web page. Body basically gives the document to be sent or received and this body is there both in the request message as well as in the response message. Now let us look at the two different types of HTTP transaction. One is called the persistent connection and the other one is called the non-persistent connection. Persistent connection is the default connection of HTTP version 1.1 and here the server leaves the connection open for future requests. It can close the connection upon a request from the client or when the timeout occurs. For non-persistent connection, there is a TCP connection for each request and response, unlike persistent connection. So what happens? What are the different steps? The client initially has to open a TCP connection for a non-persistent connection. Then after opening the connection, it should send a request message to the server for a particular web document. Then upon receipt of the request from the client, the server should send the response in the form of the result of the web document, either it is static or dynamic or active. If it is static, it should send the HTML web document. If it is dynamic, it should send CGI. CGI basically is Common Gateway Interface, and it is not a simple language, but it is a combination of various languages like C, C++, shell programming, etc. And if it is an active document, it should send the applet or the Java applet back to the client for it to be run at the client end. After that, the server should close the connection, and then the client has to read the data until end of file. Then the client closes the connection. So this is the overall HTTP transaction using persistent connection as well as non-persistent connection. What is a proxy server? The computer that keeps copies of responses to recent requests. It is known as the proxy server. If it is the client here, it should make a request. Instead of making the request directly to the server, it makes a request to the proxy, which basically acts as a server by keeping the copies of responses to recent requests, and then it goes to the server end through the internet. The server sends the request back to the proxy, then proxy can send it to the client, or it can even directly send to the client. Now, what is the utility of proxy? It basically reduces the load on the server. The server may have multiple requests from various clients. So in that case, the server will be overloaded, so it offloads its services to the proxy. It also decreases the traffic that should go from the client to the server end, and it basically improves the latency or the delay. Many a time it happens that the server is having a queue of requests, and in order to serve that queue of requests, there is a delay in the response. So if one can use the proxy server here, so that latency will be much reduced. To summarize, in this video, we have learned about the concept of web and HTTP. We have learned about the WW architecture, the browser architecture. We have learned that there are basically three different parts of a browser architecture, like controller, then client protocols, and then the interpreter. We have learned about the different types of web documents. We have learned about the static web document, dynamic web document, and active web document. We have learned that HTML is used for static, for dynamic we use CGI, and for active we can use JavaScripts. We have understood about the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol, then how the transaction is made in HTTP. Then we have touched about the proxy server and its advantages. Thank you.